now hand over to Alison Leary to speak to sticky floors and trapdoors forced demotion in nursing. Over to you, Alison. Thank you, and thank you to Thea.
Thanks very much. And yeah, I kind of echo everything Thea and Steph have saying. I think we're going to be in quite a lot of trouble if we don't do something about district nursing. And as someone that's ageing, it really does worry me. Data quality isn't great, which is one of the reasons I always support the benchmarking, because it's one of the ways that we can actually look at things like workloads. So it's actually really important. I'm going to talk about something different today. We've been doing a project, QICN and NHS unions together. I should declare an interest that I am also now Deputy President of the RCN. And we've been working on a project to look at essentially career regression in nursing. So nursing is one of the professions, in fact, it's the predominant profession where there is career regression. People go down the pay grades, rather than most professions where people tend to either stay or go up them. So I'm going to talk a little bit about that and the reasons for that and what we can think about with that as well. So I'm going to take control. So it's a bit like being at NASA, and that's what we're going to talk about. So hopefully, I don't know if you can see my slides. Hopefully you can. So this is a project between a number of different organisations led by QICN, and also it worked with Jose, who's our analyst. I'm just going to talk about what sticky floor is first. So the sticky floor is a well-documented, what we call pink collar effect. So work that's done primarily by women, but even when men do it, it's a sort of halo effect. It's called the pink collar effect. And what it tends to do is, we often talk about glass ceiling. So, you know, people getting promoted and they might get stopped from being promoted. In predominantly female professions, it's actually people being pulled down, being pulled backwards by a number of different factors. There's the work of people like Christine Williams. So we know that women, like particularly nurses, actually, they'll start pretty much on the same pay when they graduate, but then men will get promoted further and faster. But even the men in nursing won't match the pay of other men in the workforce. So there's this like pink collar effect. We call it the sticky floor because we see people staying on the lowest pay band. So if you look at the NHS pay distribution currently, so you've got nurses and midwives there on the, like it's the fourth one down. More people are on band 5 proportionally in nursing midwifery than the other professional groups. That's not to say for a minute the other professional groups don't deserve what they're paid, because I think people worry about that. That's not the issue at all. But what it does, if you look at the distribution, particularly at band 6, 7 and 8A, you'll see proportionally more people on those salaries. If you look at AHPs and pharmacists particularly, who have more men than nursing does, you'll see essentially this kind of sticky floor for nursing, and it particularly affects Black women. So Black women are most likely to be pulled onto the sticky floor. And one of the things that we see is when we see expansion in the workforce, so people say to me, there's more nurses than ever before. When you look at that, so if you look at Black and Black British or Asian nurses in the workforce, the expansion is of them, and it is in band 5. And so we can really see that there's quite a lot of inequity at that. So what is the trapdoor? We look at the trapdoor, it's where nurses are the group that tend to go down grades. So if you look at the nursing distribution, the distribution of nurses across the age groups, you'll see at band 5 there's quite a lot of people, and sort of you've got a kind of mid-career going into band 6 and 7. If you compare that again with the AHP workforce, you'll see something very different. They tend to cluster at 6 and 7. this is partly due to people like paramedics who you kind of get a band 6 after preceptorship, and but they don't go back, and that's the important thing. They don't come back down through the sticky floor, through the trap door. So I've become sort of curious about this, and when you talk to people about this, they'll say, well, it's because women work part-time, it's predominantly female workforce, and there's never really any other reasons given for it. And I kind of got curious about it, and so we started to do some work to ask people why they accepted or sought demotion, going back down grades in nursing. And this is the group that we looked at. You can see actually community nursing and general practice nursing are some of the biggest groups that this happens to. We just kind of got 600 people, and we asked them why. Why did you do it? So this is not a stratified sample. This is a bit of market research, really, to inform some research, because it's actually very under-researched. So we wanted to know why they were doing it, and essentially, what were the reasons that you took a lower band or a lower paid salary? And a lot of it was around flexibility and flexible working, but there are also, as you can see, it's quite a big distribution of reasons. And also this kind of mystery. So what was going on there? So out of this, I pulled all the district nursing responses to figure out a bit about why district nursing particularly, and so this is district nurses, just to be clear, this is district nurses and community nurses, so like people that work in the community. And the reasons for downbanding, really, so flexible working, some people wanted to change jobs, but they were only available at a lower grade. So the job they wanted wasn't available, maybe in the place they wanted. Bullying and harassment, mental health needs, being refused flexible working was really interesting, because it's a lot of the responses we got were actually, as someone that's now part of the leadership of a large professional association, some of them I thought were people have very, very good employment claims for. They were clearly discriminatory. Community nursing teams and general practice were the most common settings for those people experiencing downbanding. So we look at those kinds of reasons. So in terms of flexibility, it was things like childcare, caring for older adults, a lack of organisational support for flexible working. And I'm going to come on to one of the particular aspects of that in a second, because there's one that's, I think, quite troubling about that. We are seeing a lot of reorganisation as well. So reorganisations, restructuring, redundancy, job freezes, lack of promotion. The bullying and toxic culture, a lot of it was about indifference as well as bullying. So managerial indifference came up quite a lot. So, and then there's this lack of recognition. So in workforce, we talk about respect, reward, recognition, recruit, retain, return. And respect, reward, and lack of recognition was really there. So people were developing themselves, moving on their services, and really not getting anywhere, not being rewarded for it. So we would see that there are these systemic barriers and institutional barriers and societal barriers, actually. So women's work not being as valued. We've known that for a very, very long time. But women that are also have caring responsibilities, their work was kind of more devalued. We're seeing this sort of intersectional issue between gender, ethnicity, caring, health status. Some of the examples people gave us, which would probably breach the Equality Act, were around reasonable adjustments, people that were disabled. There's the stuff around organisational culture, and when it came to either promotion, demotion, or choice or managers' preferences around working hours, for example, the thing that really kind of upset people is that the process was really opaque. and unfair. So some people would get access to flexible working and other people in the team wouldn't get access to flexible working, that kind of thing. So there was quite a lot of inequity. I think this is an area where there's real policy gaps. No healthcare workforce policy recognises the fact that healthcare, so not just nursing, but healthcare generally, is a gendered workforce. It is 77, 78% female. And there is no kind of accommodation for that at all, no kind of consideration of that. So thinking about some of the more specific areas of district nursing. So one of the really common ones, so I've chosen typical responses here, was being denied access to flexible working because of service needs. So either we see this, if I do it for you, I've got to do it for everybody. You have to do it for everybody anyway, because kind of that's the law. We need full-time people or you can't do the job. Again, bordering on legality there. There is definitely an association between grade and part-time working. So one of the really common things that was reported by your band 7s can't be part-time or band 7s can't drop hours. And that kind of thing. So we saw quite a lot of that in these data. So even though people could make plans for covering their time, I think there was also an articulation of managers fearing that if you let someone work 30 hours a week instead of 7.5, they'd lose that 7.5 hours a week from their budget. So again, I think that's a policy issue. We see this devaluing of the role, this structural devaluing of the role, really. Kind of concerningly, I kind of see nurses do this to other nurses, which is a little bit worrying. I don't really see other professionals doing this so much. So essentially, the role becomes devalued constantly, and more work, more and more complex work, more and more qualifications, but actually then degrading pay. And I think that this issue as well as if you do, which is very, very persistent in all of nursing, that if you do things like bank work, you get paid the lowest grade and you still end up doing the job that you were doing anyway. I mean, I think that is a real issue. The other reasons were the DNSPQ. So this came up quite a bit, and the apprenticeship that I don't see this, I don't think I see this in any other professional group actually, that if you want to train and take on more qualifications and experience, you have to drop a pay grade. I first have heard about this about 10 years ago and I still can't believe it. It's a really bad retention strategy, I think. So taking this sort of lower paid role to become a DN, it doesn't surprise me that we lose DNs. I mean, I think when we looked at the data, there were about 14,000 people on the NMC register with the DNSPQ, but only about 3,500 people working as DNs. And when you look at where people go, so we pulled off everybody as employer from the NMC, and a lot of people went into general practice, a lot went back into hospitals, and other people went into industry or charity. Areas like aesthetics were becoming more popular. So there's this real lack of talent management, and we absolutely need to retain people. Healthcare is incredibly risky, and failing to retain people is actually really bad news for all of us. So we did see quite a lot of discriminatory practices, and I think this was quite a common thing, either direct or indirect, what might be actually discrimination. So I think what we're going to do is we've almost finished writing this report up. It will be published. But I just want to consider sort of tying this experience in of regression of the career with why people leave. So this is something we actually did for Nuffield a couple of years ago. We looked at these data for one of the summits, and we were quite fortunate in that we capture in pulse surveys people who are actually leaving. So this is not intention to leave. This is people actually deciding they are going to leave. And you can see that you know, things like pay are on there, but not feeling valued and pay, you are kind of two sides of the same coin, really. But things like staffing, overwork, distress, there's quite a lot of district nurses in this sample. And the reason this is important is for retention. So healthcare doesn't have an overarching safety regulator. It relies far more than any other safety critical industry on its frontline workforce. Your safety in the air on a plane is the people on the plane, but also all the infrastructure, all the safety infrastructure around that, making sure that it's not going to fly into another plane, and the engineers have looked at it and all the rest of it. In healthcare, it's far more reliant on that one person standing in front of you. This is why we have to retain frontline expertise. As Thea said, the work is becoming more complex. And when we look at areas like district nursing or any case managing nurse, this is all the sort of the things that we see, the factors that we see that are making work more complex. Policy currently does not embrace complexity in this way. It's, as Thea sort of alluded to, what we're seeing is this train to task model, which is really bad news, I think, for all of us, actually. We need a workforce that can embrace complexity, but we also need workforce policy that can also embrace complexity, because a case managing workforce is key to continuity. Continuity is key to safety. You only have to look at coroner's reports to understand why continuity is important to safety. Also from Nuffield as well. So this is quite a lot of Nuffield stuff I'm using here, actually, because it's very good. I think this Billy Palmer. We are facing a massive rookie factor in the NHS. So more and more of our frontline workforce, who we are incredibly dependent on for safety, are less experienced. And that's another reason we need to retain people. All of this is a symptom of a bigger issue. Nursing is still not costed as a sort of essential safety critical service. It's still costed as hotel services. Only the cost of nursing is looked at, not its return on investment. Nurses themselves are the only group I work with that say anyone can do their work. I don't work with any other group that does that, but they will constantly say anyone can do their work, and that their work is being nice, and it's giving, you know, it's tasks, and it for a start, I don't really understand why people say that, but it's actually not true, and there's huge risks in saying stuff like that. Actually, we don't claim agency and expertise. Nurses don't really claim their expertise, and we've seen this downdrift over the years in pay, in progression, in frontline expertise. We've seen this downdrift. Nursing and healthcare generally is a knowledge-intensive occupation, and what we're seeing is a downdrift in all of those areas. Lots of people still doing workforce reviews, and you need to really look at your workforce, but not at the cost of the workforce, which we often see, and we're still seeing much more in the way of taskification of care. So this very reductionist approach, where care is divided into a series of tasks and then given to different people, a division of labour. Nurses themselves often portray nursing as inconsequential, which is really not great. The way people, I will still hear people say the words just and basic about nursing. There is nothing just or basic about it, but you still hear people saying it. And quite often, it's actually quite hard to get your foot in the door when it comes to policy. So nursing is quite often done to, not done with. And I think that's one of the things that really, to help with things like career regression, we need to be maybe a bit more vocal, which hopefully we will be. So I will leave you with my very favourite slide. It's always my very favourite slide from Red Adair. If you think it's expensive to hire a professional to do the job, wait until you hire an amateur, because you cannot underestimate the value of frontline expertise. And that's it from me. I'd be happy to answer any questions. Thanks very much.